Call this meeting of the Hamilton Wenham Regional School Committee to order at 7:12. And I'd ask you all to join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, and our first order of business is actually to receive the official certified votes from the towns of Hamilton and Wenham, and they're actually starting on page 25 of the packets. And they, there you go. See, there our top three vote getters were Michelle Bailey, Michelle Horgan, and David Polito. So congratulations, and we have Diane Bucher here to actually administer the oath. That should be yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me here tonight to offer the oath of office to the newly elected members. But before I do that, I'd like to express gratitude to all the candidates who did throw their hat into the race. Both Andrea Della Russo, the Hamilton Town Clerk, and myself, as well as all the residents of both towns, appreciate their willingness to get involved. We hope that they will continue to get involved, whether it's with this school committee or with any other area of our community. To the newly elected officials, Michelle, and David, I congratulate you and wish you much success as you give your time, energy, and efforts to this position. It's required that you are aware of and understand the state's open meeting law, the conflict of interest or ethics law, the Hamilton Wenham Regional School District agreement, and your town's bylaws. If you do not have access to any of those items, please let myself or Andrea know. We, as your town clerks, are here to assist public officials in any way that we can. To the Hamilton Wenham Regional School Committee as a whole, we'd like to remind you that this meeting is the start of your new term, and with that, you should be reorganizing as a committee and voting in your officers. I did see this morning on your agenda, and I wish you well in that endeavor. Lastly, I'd like to remind the committee members that as a group, you will need to come to consensus and compromise on many issues. Individually, each of you are equal parties and bring important qualities to this committee's discourse. All of the residents of both towns hope that this can be accomplished for the benefit of not only the children, staff, and schools, but for the communities at large. Finally, after 5 years of being town clerk, I can say this. I urge you to use social media wisely. As elected officials, you are all now represent the Hamilton Wenham Regional School District and the towns of Hamilton and Wenham, and therefore should report on and react to posts in a way that is supportive of these entities. So I am aware that Michelle H. has previously taken her oath at Hamilton Town Hall. So with that, I ask that the newly elected officials from the town of Wenham, Michelle and David, to please stand, raise your right hand, and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Michelle Bailey,
Thank you. Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully and impartially
that I will faithfully and impartially
perform my duties
perform my duties
as a member of the Hamilton Wenham Regional School Committee
as a member of the Hamilton Wenham Regional School Committee
to the best of my knowledge and ability,
to the best of my knowledge and ability,
according to the bylaws of Wenham,
according to the bylaws of Wenham,
the Hamilton Wenham Regional School District Agreement,
the Hamilton Wenham Regional School District Agreement,
the laws of the Commonwealth,
the laws of the
and
Commonwealth,
the Constitution of the United States.
and the Constitution of the United States.
I congratulate you and thank you, and I'm just going to come by so you can sign the log of oaths and you can continue with your meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're so funny. As a meeting that you're aware of them, you could just sign that. And I filled it all out ready for you. Thank you.
Oh, fancy
Pen. 175th, yeah.
We are super fancy.
Nice. Do we all get one? Come on. Nice. It's the new gold watch.
Oh,
really?
So they give congratulations and town official.
I was going to give you a high five. Thank you. Nice job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for letting me interrupt. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much, Diane.
Nice to see you all.
Thank
Have a
you.
wonderful night. I don't know.
All right. So that I can pass on the gavel, we'll actually move to the reorganization piece of the meeting. And so I will entertain nominations for the chair of the Hamilton-Wenham Regional School Committee.
I'd like to nominate Michelle Bailey for chair.
Second?
I would like to nominate David Polito for chair.
Second.
Do both of you accept the nominations? This is the first question.
Yes, I would accept a nomination.
Yes.
I think last time we did this, we gave each member a couple of minutes to state why they would like to be chair. So,
Sure.
preferences to who goes first, or
Incumbents always. Top of the list.
she's going to let the incumbent go first.
So, all right, so I guess that's probably what I'll lead with anyways, the fact that I've now spent a year as chair of the school committee, and I think that going into this period of transition, consistency is going to be really important. And, I really feel that at this point, I'm just starting to get the hang of really all of the duties that are involved in being chair. It's pretty overwhelming at times. I had a pleasure serving the board and the district for the past year, and we would just really like to continue doing so moving forward.
I would enjoy being chair of the school committee. I feel that I can represent the school committee to various town officials in a very positive way. I come from a town that has a long-standing tradition of rotating the chairmanship so as to develop all the members' leadership, also to sort of give a new spin on things each year. So I've found that to be very beneficial and support that type of leadership. I feel that we're all members on this board, and we all have qualities to share, and that we should all be sharing in all those responsibilities. And I would appreciate the support in being the chair this year.
Does anybody else from the table have any comments to make?
Can we ask questions or comments or no?
Sure.
I was just curious, last year was a very difficult year, and we had a lot of lack of communication, I guess, equally, and I'd like to see how each one of you would address that to change from last year, because it was a very difficult year.
I don't really understand what you mean when you say there's a lack of communication. I try to conduct myself openly and honestly, and while maintaining the boundaries of open meeting law. But other than that, I thought I was actually very vocal in the public and vocal in our meetings, and try to be as clear as possible at all times. So, I would just continue to try to grow in that communication role that I've actually been doing.
So when I went to the MASC training, and also just my philosophy is that the chair is a member among members, and I would definitely, without, if the superintendent were to ask me to keep something in confidence, I would keep it in confidence. But otherwise, if I, get something from any body, I would certainly just forward it. It's, technology today, it's very easy to keep people in the loop. I certainly, if I was planning, to make any sort of public presentation or to make any motions on behalf of the committee, would let people know in advance so that they could participate in a strategy I think one of the things we talked about at the last meeting was making sure that we all had talking points before the town meeting, and I think that's something that can be done through us having stronger communication about how we're going to work together.
So I'll call for votes for Michelle Bailey for chair. Raise your hands, please. That's 3. And for David Polito. That's 4. Okay. There you go.
So, all right, next order of business would be moving on to assistant chair.
Vice chair.
Vice chair.
I don't know, so that's what I always call it. Do we have any nominations?
I would nominate Gene Lee if he was willing to do that again. I think it's important for us to maintain a consistency in sharing leadership amongst the towns.
In that vein, I'm going to actually nominate Carrie Gertz.
What do you say?
So I appreciate your confidence in me, but unfortunately, I won't be able to take on the leadership role this year
Okay.
in that way. So,
Gene did
thank you.
not accept.
Do we have any other nominations? Then why don't we move on to a vote then? All those in favor of Carrie as assistant chair, please raise your hand. Unanimous. Congratulations, Carrie.
Thank you.
All right, next we are moving into the secretary role, correct? So,
I accept.
thanks for the do we have any nominations for secretary?
I nominate Michelle Horrigan. There's no I in there, Michelle Horrigan. Sorry.
Do you want it?
You want it?
Can I honestly say, for me, on the first year, I would prefer to get my feet wet,
Sure.
dip my toes instead of jumping or belly flopping in.
Yeah.
So I would defer to.
Understandable.
It's totally fine. The only reason I did that is it is a really amazing opportunity, because when you're sitting in the meeting, there's a lot going on. You're listening and you're hearing and you're processing. And if you're the secretary, then what you're doing then is just rereading the minutes. So it gives you a lot of time to really develop sort of like, oh, that's the rhythm, that's what was said. If it's not something you can do, that's fine. It's totally fine.
Thank you, but I'll
I didn't
defer
mean to spring it on you, but
That's fine, thank you. I'll defer to a more seasoned committee member. Thank you.
Michelle, the same exact thing happened to me when I was sitting in your seat. It was a very good experience. I learned a lot, but I can appreciate
Thank
your
you.
position at this point.
Age has wisdom.
All right, other nominations? It's always a difficult part. It feels like you're throwing people on. I guess, would anyone like to step up and be secretary? I swear I do.
I'd like to nominate Stacy Metternich.
I would second that. Seamless transition.
She accept.
You accept?
I accept.
Okay. All those in favor is Stacy Metternich for secretary, please raise your hand.
I don't have to vote for myself.
So,
you do not have to.
Oh,
Don't have to vote for yourself.
I didn't vote for myself when for assistant treasurer the first year.
I'm sure you wouldn't.
So,
Oh, we need a treasurer now.
Jeff
We do.
didn't either.
It's unanimous.
So, Michelle, we actually have a fourth role of an assistant secretary that just sort of has to stand in when Michelle's not here. Would you be interested in that
Yes,
role?
that's fine.
Sorry, didn't mean that.
No.
All right.
Thank you. You're doing me a favor.
So, nominate?
Yeah.
All right, so then I nominate Michelle Horgan for the role of Assistant Secretary.
Second?
She says she'll accept that, so.
Do you accept the?
Yes,
accept it?
I'll accept it.
So, all those in favor of Michelle, so, wow, that was quick.
She's doing the same thing I did. I'm not ready.
I think that's the much better role.
She didn't vote for
the
herself
first
either?
time.
All right, 6-0.
Michelle, I got made assistant treasurer my first meeting.
So I did too.
Was secretary my first
Yeah.
year.
Me too.
I got all the experience with it.
All right, so now that is all the officer roles.
Right.
So now we're looking at subcommittee reorganization. So I guess the first thing we want to do is we're looking for capital.
Well, so we don't have standing committees, so first we need to create those committees.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Is what we want to actually,
I'd say you probably want to start with policy, because that's the one you have to have.
right, policy.
I think we need a negotiations committee.
Yeah, we need negotiations.
Warrant subcommittee?
Yeah, how are we going to do the warrant? I guess we can sort of.
Let's just, in this case, it would just be a subcommittee of one.
With a backup.
Well, we
Right.
need a backup.
Right.
Right.
So it's, yeah.
2 people.
Okay.
So basically, just so Michelle, to get you up to date, everybody needs to be on one, and if you're not, the chair usually is not really on subcommittees, so we need to take on a couple of these. Some take more time than others on these subcommittees, just so you know.
Yep, thank you.
You know, capital.
So going, yeah, have capital. I think that's key. And one thing that I was against last year, but after the learning curve I had that was this past year, is probably reorganizing a communications subcommittee.
I agree.
I know, you tried to tell me last year. So we have capital policy, negotiations, the warrant, and communications. Do we have any other suggestions?
A lot.
It is, but I mean, again, some are sort of more involved than others. Excuse me. So do we need to vote these in as what our subcommittees are going to be, or
Yes.
just,
So is policy, and legislative?
excuse me?
Is it policy and legislative, or do we have something that's separate, keeping in touch with our legislators?
That
And-
probably makes the most sense. That's what we combined last year, right?
Yes.
We have traditionally.
And then somebody within the group has to be, in charge of doing legislative liaison type within that group, is what we did last year, but it can change, however.
All right, so why don't we, let's see if we want negotiations, if no one has any other suggestions, why don't we just move to vote these in as our subcommittees for the year?
That's Marilee, that's David's.
So, I'm sorry, did you say something, Michelle?
No, I asked.
David
her.
asked me
okay.
a question, I answered it for him.
I just want to make sure I'm,
No.
dotting all the i's.
Yeah,
Sorry, I
sounds good.
interrupted.
All right.
All right, so then, I move that the Hamilton Wenham Regional School Committee for the fiscal year, well, for the term beginning April 2019, establish the following committees, subcommittees: capital, policy, legislative, policy/legislative, negotiations, warrant, and communications.
Sorry if I knew you were going to be reading that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Second.
All those in favor?
I have a question. Is it
I'm sorry.
capital or capital finance? Because I think last year it was capital finance or something
It
like
was
that.
capital planning, finance, and Turfield was one group. So is that how we're doing it this year?
Well, this would be the time to discuss that.
I think if you put policy and legislative and capital together, it would be too much.
Yeah, no,
Oh,
that would
yeah,
definitely
yeah,
be
yeah.
separate.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
it'd be
I was
separate.
confused.
Yeah, so capital is one,
Capital
policy
planning,
/
finance,
legislative
and
is another one.
turf, yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
I think I would think that when the subcommittees are established, then the
Yep.
mission, everybody would have to do, every committee would sort of establish a mission of, and tasks and goals and that sort of stuff, and that could be wrapped in.
Mhm.
That's my thought.
Yep.
Suggestion.
And is warrants a committee or a person?
Warrants, that subcommittee of who's going to go and just sign the warrants on Wednesdays.
Right.
That's how we've done it the
So
past.
we need
six months or
the
so.
person responsible in the back.
Yeah, so it's not really a committee, it's
It's not
just.
really-
Well, it
Yeah.
was, I believe it was voted in as a subcommittee when we changed the process, because then I was voted to be the warrant committee.
That's my recollection as well.
Yeah.
It's a committee of one?
Yeah.
So it's two, it's,
One is the point
Oh.
person
Carrie and
and
I.
one is the,
Okay.
for the lack of a better.
So should we,
supposed to be me and then
so should
Carrie,
we
but then it
start
got voted in
organizing
wrong.
the groups then, like who's interested in each committee, working group, and we, as a process, so we can,
Well, at first, I think we should probably vote this in, and I guess right now on the table is whether capital subcommittee is just capital, if we're gonna change the name to capital finance and turf field like we had last year. I think turf field is done. And I'm looking for feedback.
Can you explain to me what it encompasses?
So, the thought process last year, I guess, of grouping them together was in trying to reorganize the capital, the capital requests for the school district, that it would also does tie in with finance. Other than that, I don't know. I was on station member of the capital committee. So really where that finance factor comes in, that's the only place I can really think of how it would, because you're theoretically prioritizing what, we should be doing as capital requests for the committee. And the turf field is just sort of this thing that's been floating around for a couple of years now. We just
yeah,
want to
and
give
it's
it a home.
something we want to really try and
And it-
push that forward, to be part of it, because it includes in the capital.
Yeah.
I was the chair the last 2 years, actually, of that working group.
Okay, thank you.
So, I mean,
Makes sense.
that process is that it is a capital request at some level.
Part of the 5-year capital plan, so all kind of together.
So I guess, for continuality's sake, we'll go with the capital legislative. No, I'm sorry.
No,
Capital
capital planning, finance, and turf
Actually
field,
reading
yes.
legislative as a.
Okay, I guess, can I give you my 2 cents? So I think it's very important that the committee and the subcommittee focus and produce something that comes out of the subcommittee. And capital plan, finance, and turf field is pretty broad ranging.
Right.
And is going to require a tremendous amount of work outside of these normal meetings. So I would encourage the committee to not be so broad and to be more narrowed and focused this year and focus on the capital plan in and of itself this year.
I agree with you.
I think that's important.
I've
to do.
actually not.
Yeah, just my 2 cents.
I've not been a fan of grouping in the turf field, but I think at the same time, should something arise, that it could fall under the capital project,
So by definition, the turf
Right.
field falls
We'll
under
be
the
on
capital
that.
plan, as does all the master plan projects and
Well, we
other
had voted
things.
in
That's
the
a
turf
lot.
field as encompassing from what was a separate group, and that's why we brought it in, because the fundraising.
Oh, I understand. I'm
So
just giving
that's
you
why
my advice.
That
Yeah.
was done.
Yeah, I also, we don't know, but in the future, we may need some sort of like building committee.
Mhm.
And so is the capital planning going to be that as well? So,
It would not normally.
right, so that's something else to keep in mind as we're like thinking about
should
what is
we-
capital going to look like? There's,
We wouldn't
could
get,
be, it's more like capital planning, so it's like not capital creating.
so, but the process, the SOI process last year brought us to what, December
Yes.
So that would leave us sort of 3 months where, you know, if things came back in our favor, that, you know, maybe it could be grouped under capital until the next session where we could then put, you know, put in a building committee at that point.
So just to clarify, so once you're invited into that process,
Yeah.
there's a requirement from the MSBA's perspective to create a very prescribed
Okay.
Building
committee that's made up of certain types of
Right.
people from certain walks of life.
And it's not just
So-
school, it's not just school
No.
committees.
No,
So
it's
that's
not.
why it's gotta be a
It's very, very
separate,
detailed.
Yeah.
Right.
a separate group.
Members of the community, members of the select boards, members of the FinComs,
It's
members
quite
that
a
are
large group.
MCPPOs.
It's a large group with a
all
lot
those
of
kinds
meetings.
things. Yeah. So there's a lot to
Yeah,
it.
100.
A lot.
And where does Long Meadow fall? Is that under negotiations, or is that under finance, or where does that fall?
Well, at the moment, it's definitely in negotiations.
Right.
Okay, so that's what that is. So we would call it like negotiations, okay.
So we also have the opportunity to create additional subcommittees later and also revise the charges of the subcommittees, right? So I think I would suggest that we vote the subcommittees in, constitute the subcommittees, let the people, the members then sort of develop the charges, which would then would come back to the full committee, and then we can proceed from there. Because
I
if we
agree. That's what
argue
we-
this
that's what
tonight,
we've
it's going
done
to take us
every-
another 30
That's what we've
minutes.
done every year, yeah.
So that's what I would suggest. So
So then should we start, have we voted in
No,
these
we have-
it
no,
groups?
was, it was seconded,
Okay.
right? It was seconded, so we have to
Yep.
vote them in.
So, all those in favor? Opposed? Abstaining?
She voted yes.
Oh, did she? All right,
Yeah,
I
it
just, I
was
missed you.
unanimous.
Sorry. Mike's head was in the way.
Me?
Sorry, my bad.
Yeah.
Our heads were.
It was
Okay.
unanimous.
There you go.
Great, thank you. So, I don't know, why do we bang off these smaller ones first? The warrant subcommittee, I do not mind doing that again.
So let's just remind ourselves of the commitment, right? So
No, yeah,
it's.
no, that's how I know that
Yeah,
I'm
well,
okay with it.
we have a new member, so
Okay.
for Michelle's
Yep,
benefit
great, thank you.
especially. So, so what we mean by this is, so every 2 weeks, roughly, we run an accounts payable warrant, which is made up of a stack of checks that we owe our vendors and other folks, and then we process payroll 26 times a year. And Chapter 71, which is the statutes that govern regional school districts, they're very specific about who needs to approve the warrants. So when I use the word warrants, I mean payroll and AP. Who needs to approve the warrants? So the law says that the school committee or a subcommittee, or now just a person that's delegated by the school committee, can, if they're authorized, needs to approve those warrants before I can release payroll and checks to vendors. So what we're looking for is for somebody to physically come into the office on a very prescribed schedule at a very strict time, to come in and meet with the treasurer and our team to review and sign those documents so that we can release particularly payroll.
Perfect.
So that's kind of what we're talking about.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And traditionally, it's been Wednesdays between about
Wednesday
2
in the
and
afternoon.
4:30.
Yeah, yeah.
Right now, I know that works well for me, so that's why I'm saying,
That's,
looking ahead.
yeah. Barring any other conversation, that's the way it will stick, and
Yeah.
I'll publish the schedule for the upcoming year, probably in late May or early June, and everybody will know the schedule and all that kind of stuff, but that's kind of the gist of it.
So Wednesdays between 2 and 4? That-
Wednesdays
that-
between-
that
Typically.
rules me out.
Typically.
I'm at school.
I couldn't
I'm at school.
get here
Let's
between
put it
Yeah,
that
that's
way.
why it's sort of,
Yeah.
sort of
So
sorts
that
itself
rules
out.
me out.
You wouldn't.
Not
do
me.
it?
No,
Because
you
I'm
can
at
do it?
school.
Yeah.
All right, Michelle. that you can
Oh,
do
cool,
it.
good.
Yep, okay.
Oh, great, thank you. Dante, I just wrote Dante instead of David.
So it's David and Michelle is,
We're gonna back up.
Great.
So I think moving
So
forward.
that one has to be voted.
Excuse me?
That one has to be voted.
Has to be-
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, so I wasn't sure if we had a,
So you, yeah.
You want me to do it?
please.
Oh, sure.
I move that we nominate David and Michelle Horgan, David Polito and Michelle Horgan to do warrants.
Second.
All those in favor? So that's unanimous. So moving forward, looking at this year, obviously we have a big year ahead of us. And as far as these subcommittees go, I actually really see the capital subcommittees having the most to do this year and being the most important of the subcommittee. Not that anyone is more important than the other. And sort of in that regard and in that vein, I'd sort of like to ask Jean, Peter, and Michelle Horgan if they would actually like to be part of that subcommittee. I think it's going to be a pretty
Don't you
busy-
think it should be whoever wants to be instead of appointing
I'm
people?
not appointing,
Nominating.
I'm asking.
Nominating?
So, yeah, so, you know, and I do know that, you know, everybody's schedule is very busy, so I'm not even sure, you know, who can do this, but really thinking about this, and as I said, everything that I've learned this past year and trying to grow the committee moving forward, you know, I just, that's my singular thought process. And I definitely want to put that out there. I just think that it's a very key role moving forward, and, you know, and I'd like to see, you know, I can see those individuals working very well together on behalf of the committee with the administration, and then the towns at some point as well, I'd imagine.
Well, I'd like to do the capital committee, subcommittee.
I too will join you, Jean.
Bless you.
Peter, come on, join the fun.
I'd like to do it. I'd like to do it,
And
since I've done it, and just to keep it consistent with some of the minutes too.
Right, and I'm of the thinking that it should be somebody with more experience than I am who understands the needs better. So I would nominate Stacy.
Actually, I think you'd be great in the role, but I can appreciate that. So, Jean, Michelle Horgan, and Stacy. Motion?
I nominate Michelle Horgan, Jean Lee, and Stacy Metternich to the Capital Planning Finance Subcommittee.
Second.
All those in favor? Unanimous? Next up, we'll do policy and legislative. So I actually really like being on this. We're in the midst of reorganizing in conjunction with the MASC policy, correct? And I know that, do we have prescribed meetings with the MASC already?
We have one right now.
All right.
Next Monday?
And so next Monday, are we doing it section by section, coming in, going over? See, I'd love to do this, but I just don't know if I have the time. Do we have anyone that would like to work on this committee?
Well, can
I'll keep doing it. That's
Okay.
fine.
I ask just a clarification question in general? Because I don't think since I've been on the committee, we've had a communication subcommittee.
So,
What, is that communicating to the district? Is it communicating amongst ourselves or other
yeah, so what happened was-
administrators?
is it 2 years ago? I think it ended, right? And it was, you and Deb?
No,
I know it was Deb and I.
it was me.
It was, or you, and Michelle, and we met once a month to put out a newsletter just sort of informing the public that then got emailed out on just the happenings within the district and the school committee itself. Last year, I was adamant about not having it because I just didn't have the time to put into it that I had the previous year, and I felt that it was something that wouldn't be missed if it went away, and so I was passionately asked to keep it, and I ignored that plea, and turns out that, you know, it definitely was missed, especially in regards to coming up to town meeting, just having some sort of available outlet to get the information out. You know, and again, I think, you know, looking ahead, you know, from learning from this past year, this would be that area where, you know, putting together key talking points would make the most sense. Does it need to be at the scale that it was 2 years ago? Perhaps not. But I do think that, you know, I'm definitely in agreement that it's an important subcommittee to have, to be sort of determined how active it is by the, you know, by the charge of the subcommittee. Does that answer your question?
It does.
So policy, in that same regard, I'm imagining we're probably looking at a meeting a month with MASC.
Yep. And they're usually 2 to 2.5 hours.
You know, so
Sometimes
yeah,
1 hour.
that's a decent time commitment outside of here.
So I was on the last policy committee, and although I did enjoy it and would enjoy it again, I would prefer to put my time into some of the other subcommittees.
See, like I said, I'd love to personally, but I don't know that I have the capacity to be meeting once a month because my schedule's constantly rotating. So even if like, oh, Mondays are good now, Mondays might not be good 2 months from now.
Will it only be limited to once a month, given
That's what I'm saying. This could be.
the transition and the
Not
conversion?
necessarily.
It
It
seems
could
like
be
it'll a
more.
lot more.
It could be more, but if we're on a 3-year schedule and, I mean, we got through at least, did we get through the whole section or most of the section?
Most.
We
Most
got
of
I thought we
through
did.
most of one section in a 2-hour meeting. But we also avoided the ones that were the most
The hard ones.
different. So,
Oh, did the
Well, we
SA
also did
SATs,
some that
right?
were not in that section because we
Right,
needed to
and there were
address
some new
them,
ones,
yeah.
So there's a lot of reading because you have to read through them all.
Right.
So,
No one all
Is
volunteer.
no one volunteering for the policy committee?
I said I would do
Michelle
it,
Michelle
Oh,
did.
she
it.
did?
Michelle, yeah, she did.
Good.
Yep.
but a committee of one is not a committee.
Nope.
Do we have to have 3 on each beside warrant? No? I don't know.
You need to have.
But this one
No,
sounds like
but-
heavy lifting
Right.
this
Yeah.
year, guys.
Yeah, you
Right.
have a lot to do, so you
Yep.
should have 3.
Well,
Yeah, a ton of work.
that's why I know I can't do it.
I mean, it's a ton of work, yes, but
It's time consuming.
but Dorothy's doing a lot of the
She's doing a lot of
work.
Right.
Like the real, like, okay, these are the policies, the comparison, she's bringing it in, so it's more of a decision-making process this year than in past years. You know, we were having to go out and like look at the MSC one, look at 2 different districts, see what they were, compare them, so, you know.
I don't, yeah, I've been meaning to get more familiar with our policies anyway.
That's why I really enjoy doing it. Like, it's a tremendous learning opportunity. Like I said, I just, I just don't know that I have but that would
Me both, but.
well, right now I'm not teaching on Mondays, so if we had Monday meetings, that doesn't mean,
Yeah, what time would it be on Mondays, though?
so this is,
Usually
I
at
mean,
7.
You just,
This-
you would,
Oh,
This
yeah,
next
yeah,
one is
you
at
set the
7.
schedule. Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys would
We
decide.
just have one scheduled, it's Monday at 7,
Okay,
but it could be different days.
okay.
Ex-
It's the 6th, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
May 6th is the first meeting at 7.
Number
May
together.
6th.
Leave a note to post that.
Yeah, and
I guess
Yeah.
I will volunteer. Soft like that.
Anybody else? I move that we nominate Michelle Bailey and Peter Wilczek to the Policy Legislative Working Group.
second.
All those in favor?
Yeah.
Negotiations.
So negotiations. All right, so this is a tough one. We currently have a contract negotiation that we have to work out with the custodial union. Possible negotiations for Long Meadow. And while those are no small tasks, those are the only things I can think of.
And a new superintendent.
New superintendent, that,
oh, that's true.
Right.
Yep.
Thank you.
so, I knew I was forgetting something.
That's-
So this is a pretty big ask as well. Is everyone okay with it? So the thought process is that we're gonna have all this stuff. Thank you, Michaela. Have all this stuff that needs to be negotiated at some point, and after the committee's actions of this previous year, more responsibility is definitely going to fall on to this subcommittee than in years past.
Can I ask, what resources as a school committee member can we use to help with negotiations?
So we would have access to the school committee's council.
Labor Council.
And, you know, in prior negotiations, we had the administration doing a lot
Still
of.
do.
You know, so.
You still have access to district
We still-
administration.
Still would be there to
Could-
Yeah, you
advise
still
you.
do. Yeah.
They're the ones who know best about changes.
So maybe we should ask who is interested in doing negotiations so we can, you know, move it forward, and then they can also work with Naomi too.
I would like to continue my work on the negotiation subcommittee.
I can join you too.
I'm sorry, what? You?
Me, yes.
I guess I'd be happy to take this on as well again this year. This negotiations warrants. Somebody?
I move that we nominate Carrie Gertz, Michelle Horgan, and David Polito to negotiations subcommittee.
Second.
All those in favor? And then finally, the communications subcommittee.
So I have another clarification question.
Go ahead.
Is there a particular format in which we're sending out these emails?
No, so
Are we, like,
that was my big
PowerPointing
thing
it?
last year, right? It is that the year prior, we had put together this, you know, flyer or newsletter that, you know, was fantastic and easy to read, but it was very time consuming for me.
And all the people who wrote the articles.
Well,
It's very time
understand that.
consuming.
I apologize. I do apologize. I didn't mean to. I'm trying to sort of speak from where I was thinking
Yeah,
of last
but
year.
it is very time consuming.
And so that, I think, is why it was sort of easy to let it go. It's like thinking about how much time you had to do, but at the same time, moving forward, it does not need to be as in-depth as it was.
That's why I think
That
that if we
particular
go
year.
back to kind of like, when I was doing it, it was just had a header, and it wasn't as gorgeous as David's, but it got the work done, and
Right.
because even when you're writing the articles, someone then has to put it together, and it's still work, so
Right. So
it's okay to have beautiful graphics, but it's got to be able to, someone to be able to throw the stuff in there
But
easy.
even the depth of the articles, I think, were sort of, like I said, it was doing a great job of getting the message out there, but whether or not it needed to be to that scale, you know, to Michelle's point, was
Yeah.
it did become very time consuming to.
Yeah, you just got to kind of follow, make sure you've got the right details, so it's throwing it back to either Mike or Jeff, because you just want to make sure, because usually the articles were pertained to what our meetings were, and so you want to make sure you have the facts. So if he said 54 students, you want to make sure you wrote 54 students as opposed to some other number, so that's the only thing, just like any type of, you know, writing articles.
It's almost a prettier regurgitation of the minutes.
Yeah, it's just so, and so that, you know, all the
Well,
citizens or people
yeah.
who are involved know what's going on too.
I mean, I'll say this about the communications need, though, that, you know, we're going to be going into a search for a permanent superintendent. We know that both towns want us to address capital needs. We have Long Meadow living out there. People don't know what's happening with the turf field. So there's a lot of need for us to as a body to communicate with the towns. And to be a little more proactive, especially when, you know, we're going to run into another tough budget year. So it's a pretty significant need for the committee as a whole, honestly, to really
I'm wondering.
Yeah, I would just say that was one of the difficulties I felt on that committee, was that it was like me and Deb writing the articles and David publishing them, and then the school committee wasn't actually seeing them until they
Right.
saw the newsletter. And also, we were going through trying to figure out what the priorities were, and it wasn't really necessarily, and actually, we had another community member on who was also helping us write articles, who is a professional writer, so that was super helpful. But it is almost like it has to be the committee deciding what messages we're going to communicate and what ways we're going to communicate it, and then communicating it. And I think, like, in my own house, when Dr. Harvey started doing the blog, like, that is easy to read, it comes out on a regular basis, and that's got one kind of information, which is like what's going on in the schools. We could do something similar, like what's going on with decision-making, you know?
What I was wondering, does it have to be like, is in-depth, okay, so there's like
It
some,
can be whatever.
It can be whatever we
Because
can.
And that's
why
what I've
can't-
realized
right.
this past year, is any information is better than no information. And I'm wondering.
I mean, we could start our Facebook page, the school committee's Facebook page. We could start our Twitter account, the school committee's
Yeah,
Twitter
that's great.
account, and
How
we could
easy
do
is to do.
it that way, because clearly there's no newspaper operating in our town right now.
Right.
I mean, there's one guy
I-
who's like covering all of the North Shore.
Not on Facebook, so I can't do that.
no. Jean is Facebook savvy.
Your name pops up with no face there.
Is that what happens? No.
So, oh, that's where Jane used to be.
I would love to be on the communications subcommittee, as long as I don't have to do PowerPoint or do, like, that's why I'm wondering, can we just sort of like, if you're doing it on Facebook, I feel like that might even be more effective,
Right.
because people are constantly scrolling, so we don't have to inundate with too much information all at once, and people might actually say, oh, wow, that's really interesting, you know, highlights for the next meeting kind of thing, and just getting the word out. I think that, and this is just my opinion, would be far more effective. I get more information about my kids' events on Facebook.
Right. It's sort of like the Wenham Town Clerk's page. Like the Wenham
Yeah.
Town Clerk shares information in very small bits, like 2 sentences.
Right.
And that would be
that's all you need.
easier
Right.
because it was daunting.
Yep.
Because
It is
I've
daunting.
been on the school committee now 6 years, and my year, we decided communications was important, so we put together a template, started doing it, so it was
That's
Deb and
crazy.
I, and, was it you, Michelle? No?
No, I think,
No, it was-
I think it's Tracy was consistent.
Yeah.
So it was, and I was on for 3 years, and it was like, okay, I've had enough, because it became very daunting, because I put it together, plus wrote articles, and it became a lot of work. So I think the Facebook idea is going with the times,
Right.
and now we just need to direct people that way.
We can even do it weekly if we're just sending out blur, or just like special event type things.
I think there could probably be some more help from the committee as a whole, like when we do our recaps at the end of the night of, you know, subcommittee recaps, to say, hey, you know what, why don't we pick these as the key
Mhm.
topics to, right? And it just helps, right?
Right.
It doesn't seem like much, but that little bit really does help. Like, okay, so we'll just,
And people don't want to be, like I said,
oh yeah,
my experience
elevator.
is people don't want to be inundated with too much, because then we lose them.
I think
And
you
then-
also have to be mindful of
Audience.
the real timeness of Facebook
Right.
and the fact that one of you may have to monitor
Yep.
if it gets out of control.
Mhm.
And, you know,
Huh.
I've seen them go in
Well,
a
you
bad
can,
place.
well, you can make
so.
the page,
Close.
as do the Friends groups, that it's only and some other groups, that only the administrators can post. There can be no comments, there can be no,
And I'm sure this
that's
is a.
totally doable.
Yeah.
Excuse me, I'm sure this is a discussion for the communications subcommittee later on, but also just keep in mind audiences. We have a wide variety in town, so that's
Yeah.
something to consider moving
Right.
forward, though.
Yeah, like how do you get something in the COA newsletter? How do you get something into things that already exist?
Right.
The town of Hamilton has a new email newsletter that comes out like all the time.
Well, and I think that probably we could talk about within the committee, maybe publishing in those particular avenues monthly or quarterly or whatever that we feel that the need is. But I don't disagree that there are other outlets that we probably should be reaching out to.
Sounds like a conversation for the subcommittee to establish
Mhm.
at the time.
Yeah, so that
Right.
can go on.
But I mean, I like the
Establish that
direction
debate.
this is going. Is there anyone else who would like to do this with Carrie?
I honestly think that this should be a charge of the whole committee, school committee itself. But you know, I know that we have a committee of 7. It's not going to get done. So
So,
Yeah, so that could be something, you know, like how at the end of each meeting, we have the topics for the next meeting. It could be topics for communication, and then it could be assigned to a person. We would just have to decide how we were going to communicate it. Is that
Maybe
what
the
you're thinking?
Maybe the working
Yeah.
groups can also then forward you an update
Yeah.
to you, and so then that way it's kind of,
But then does that become an open
well,
meeting law?
this is my thought. Like
Right.
we're all elected officials.
Right.
We have a duty and a responsibility to communicate with every
Yep.
constituent in both towns.
Yep.
With anything we need.
Mhm.
We ourselves have a goal of achieving certain things. So it behooves us all as a committee to try to be active and proactive in doing that. I mean, last year I made a commitment to establishing, a more of a one-on-one relationship with Hamilton Select Board and FinCom members, right? And I think that helped. It wasn't necessarily an issue so much, but I'm still committed to doing that. But I think as a mass group, I think as a, broad public, I think it's the charge of the whole committee, honestly. Every one of us should be out there advocating for our goals and advocating for a budget, advocating for whatever we decide to do on capital projects. I mean, it's otherwise, I mean, we've all been elected to achieve something, and that's our responsibility. That's what I feel. But again, I know that, again, as a committee of 7, it's not going to work.
Right. I think that's a great idea, but it just needs to be sort of funneled into
Right.
a couple bodies to actually.
So branching off of Michelle's idea, which is, at the end, as we finish up and look for topics for next meeting, I like your idea, sort of saying, okay, what are 2 or 3 things that we want to communicate? Maybe just one thing.
Right.
And we say, okay, assign to someone. I mean, I won't necessarily get on Facebook again for this thing, but.
Come on, man.
That's just one way.
Yeah,
We
but
could
that's one
start a
mechanism. Yeah, no, I
blog.
totally
We
get
could
it.
do
And I
whatever.
think that's where the
Yeah.
subcommittee really comes
Yeah.
in handy. It's like, all right, these are going to be our resources of
Yep.
reaching out.
Yep. Yeah.
And just being that harbinger. And in that sense, I guess I'll just volunteer with Carrie, thinking that we're sort of the pen of the voice of the committee.
Yep, yep.
And then based on, if, for example, if we created a Facebook page and it was private or people could still reach out through messaging or whatnot, and we could come back and express what, because people out there might actually have questions and have ideas.
I think, you guys can figure it out, but just to be caution, because I've seen some of the community pages, how there's fighting back and forth, and I
Yeah.
don't want to see that
So
on this.
Tracy, is it Novik? Novik with the MASC. She does a presentation on school committees using social media. And so you could reach out to her. She'd be, I'm sure, happy to help. Give you any advice.
All right, let's vote this
Okay.
in. We get a long.
I
night, so-
nominate Carrie Gertz and David Polito for the Communications Subcommittee.
Second?
All those in favor?
I'll give you the first post. No, serious. I'm not being facetious here. Like the officers of the committee for this term, and when we get the school liaison, who your school liaison is. Easy.
Yep.
The first post is going to be, we're having interviews for the interim superintendent. Here's what they,
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's what people are going to be interested in.
two.
Yeah,
That'd be easy.
you can create a public thing, yeah, whatever. I mean, these two
Yeah.
can figure it out.
Yeah. Okay.
Subcommittee reorganization, that's done. School committee liaison assignments, so we got FOB, FOC, FOW, FOHM, right?
And the CPAC.
And CPAC.
I can do the middle school, high school, since it's one, friends.
Stacy. Let's go to Sedona.
I know, I failed in my, see, this is where I failed in my communication, because my kids go to Cutler, but I guess I'll have to do that again. Unless, Michelle, I don't know if you.
No, I'm a former Winthrop parent, so I'll do Winthrop.
It's a middle color.
And I should do
All right.
Bucher,
Winthrop, Bucher.
unless you want to.
I would do Winthrop again. My kids are
Oh,
there.
you're good, you take it then.
Unless you really are committed.
No, no.
Okay.
All yours.
Peter
And,
and Bucher.
yeah, Bucher. And do
Who's
we have a
doing
wellness?
Cutler?
Don't we have a wellness?
I am.
You're doing, okay,
And wellness, we also have wellness, yep.
I can
We
never
have
do
a
that.
wellness committee?
Well,
yes.
well, we had a liaison to wellness,
Oh, I don't remember
to the
that.
wellness group.
And what about CPAC?
So we have CPAC open and now.
I'll do the
wellness.
CPAC
And I'll
So,
do,
for
okay.
another year.
and I can do
But I gotta
wellness.
be out soon.
Okay,
You want to do the wellness? Did you
Sure.
say?
Yeah.
Okay.
okay.
Where is the wellness?
I'm,
Wellness.
It's
And the
usually at
gym.
the high school. It's usually at the high school before,
Weight room.
Right.
it might be because it's Danielle.
Danielle
She is the
Petrucci.
person
That's
who
fine.
runs it, and it's usually like at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Doing it again.
I'm gonna
7 o'clock in the morning?
okay, I nominate
I know.
Um,
Personal development.
Stacy Metternich for the Hamilton Wenham Regional High School Middle School Liaison. I nominate Peter Wolzik for the Bucher Liaison, Carrie Gertz for Winthrop Liaison, Jean Lee for the Cutler Liaison, Michelle Horgan for the Wellness Committee, and Michelle Bailey for the CPAC Committee.
Second.
No, not really.
I'm like just not the only one not on a.
Right.
That's true.
So, all those in favor?
Can we go back real fast? We forgot, skip the consent agenda.
So I actually was just noticing that too.
Yeah, we can do it.
All right.
Sorry.
No problem. I just noticed that
I didn't want
as
it.
we were doing this.
Oh, I thought we were
We did.
getting the new committee stuff out of the way. That's
Well, we needed a committee first.
Yeah.
correct. Right,
Needed to
Right.
have a
yep.
group.
I want to ask if anybody wants to.
So, all right, does anyone want to pull anything out of the consent agenda?
I move that we move the consent agenda for the minutes of March 27th, 2019, minutes from April 10th, 2019, and the warrants from April 12th, 2019, and there can be no changes.
Second.
Any discussion?
No discussion.
All those in favor? Unanimous. All right, update the school committee goals. E, where is E?
Can we possibly
4S.
move
I
this for
think, I was
next
thinking we
meeting?
should probably table
Can we
this.
table this
Well,
for next
we
meeting?
should start talking about it.
I will give us 5 minutes to talk about this, in a hard 5 minutes.
So what are we, okay, so I'm just gonna, what are we gonna do when we talk about it?
What's that?
What are we gonna do when we talk about it?
So, what we're doing right now. So I guess we can look at last year's minutes, goals of advocate for a budget that calls for educational excellence, while being mindful of the fiscal constraints of the communities, reprioritize capital plans and develop an implementation strategy, monitor the Cutler SOI process and act as information is revealed, communication, more active outreach to our legislators in our district needs, more communication with town committees, BOS and FinCom, then work collaboratively with the MASC to fully convert and implement the online policy manual. Honestly, probably all of these can just be moved forward.
Is that what we're
Long
doing
narrow goal.
tonight? Is that, we're just,
So
Setting the
I think
goals?
that.
And to
we're-
talk about them for new goals for the year, is that what you're saying?
So I'm not saying anything. I'm saying it was on the thing. And we got 5 minutes to sort of figure out what we want to do and how we want to proceed moving forward. And then we could just be that, here was 2018-19, that's what we're thinking. I think we did a good job with some of them. I think we failed miserably with others. But again, except for changing Cutler to Cutler and Winthrop, a lot of these can move forward, especially the communication piece. Because MASC, we're now in the midst of that conversion. I think the advocate for a budget that calls for educational excellence should be our main priority every year. Again, this capital plans and implementation strategy, I think, is, besides the superintendent search, is probably the main, what I would think would be sort of a main goal for us this year.
I think also to finalize contracts should be on this. It wasn't on last year, which it should have been in our goals. It really needs to be on this year to make sure we finish these contracts.
well, this is the
As a
thing that
goal.
I don't understand. Are these the goals? So are we talking about next year's goals? Because these goals to me go through the end of the fiscal year. Is that, what is this, does this go through the end of
Well, I mean,
2019?
I don't even know, did we vote this in on this night last year?
No.
No.
No, this took a while. So I think this is.
You didn't
maybe-
vote for these until September.
Right.
Right.
Prioritize.
It took
sort
you
of
that long
just
to
think about
talk
where
them
we
through.
were, as we're ending our fiscal year, looking at the 2018, 2019 goals. Again, what we were good at, what we weren't so good at, and what we want to bring forward, for 1920. And I really think sort of just putting that out there on the table, back, in our minds fresh, is probably all the discussion we need to have for tonight.
Yeah, and then we just need to schedule doing our goals and getting them earlier than last year.
So,
And, and making sure we have all the goals that we need to get on there.
I think, what are we looking at for that looks like a nice late day,
You don't have one.
so.
And
Honestly, you don't. So, in the next 4.
we may have to do a goal workshop.
Let's tell you.
Well, I think we need to get through
See
some
that?
business, and then we can
Yeah.
just figure that out later.
That one either.
All right. Let's call that for the night, and then I'll have to
Yeah.
figure this out, because it's not gonna get planned right now.
Yeah, that's why I said you should start talking about it tonight, because there's not a lot of time left.
So earlier tonight, I heard that Jeff said that he has something he needs to leave for. Should we do G next? Pay me later. Technically not, because that would be illegal, but yeah, okay. Okay, sorry, I didn't know that's what you wanted.
Is that okay with
Yeah,
you?
I'm-
go
oh,
for
yeah,
it.
no, I'm good,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I'm good. Good, thank you for that. That way we can get it done. I need the glasses officially now. So a quick update on a forecast. Now's the time of the year where I do them more frequently as we get towards the end of the year. So I'll do another forecast again in May, and then do it at least one forecast.
And a knee replacement.
You guys ready for me, or?
247.
Thank you.
You're looking for a page.
They didn't get the page
Oh, okay.
number. Queued up like I was over here.
Just kidding, it's just 3 pieces of paper.
There you go.
What is it? It's
247.
247.
247. So 247. So way towards the back.
No tree was spared tonight.
That's
Added-
right where your
added
hand is.
250.
There you go.
Added 250.
All right, so I think everybody's to its place now. So, Michelle, for your benefit, I usually do a forecast in the October-November timeframe, forecast in January, and then as the year progresses and gets closer to fiscal year end, the frequency of the forecasts become more regular for obvious reasons. So we're in April, so we're 3/4 of the way through the year. It's difficult to produce a forecast when you're back in September, right? When you're only a month or 2 into the fiscal year. So frequency will get greater. As I was beginning to say, this forecast is through the first week or 2 of April. I'll do another forecast for the committee in May, and then I'll do at least 1 forecast, maybe 2 forecasts in June as we get towards the end of the year. And then typically what we do is we close the books end of the fiscal year. And then we have a traditional closing period, which is typically the first 4 to 5 weeks in a new fiscal year, where we run concurrent financial systems, and we allow ourselves times to close the books and begin the audit and all those kinds of things. And then typically towards the end of that closing process, end of July, beginning of August, I'll come back to the committee with a final kind of update around results and propose any final transfers to the committee between line items. The goal here is never to go over what you've been appropriated at the prior town meeting, right, obviously. So with that as background, this forecast, I think this is the 4th or 5th one that I've done for the year, and I continue to forecast the district to be on budget or thereabouts at the end of the year, but knowing that to get us on budget, we were going to have to tap into our full reserves, circuit breaker reserves, to cover the excess in out-of-district tuitions of approximately $550,000. So this forecast on budget depletes the reserves going into FY20. So as you look at the variances, I'll breeze through them fairly quickly. So the first variance in administration, again, this is a forecast, so I don't have a crystal ball. It's my best guess. Looking at 9 months of actuals and 3 months of forecast into the final quarter of the fiscal year. So I'm forecasting a favorable variance in administration, and that's made up of approximately $12,000 in salary savings in our human resources area. I'm forecasting approximately $50,000 worth of savings in what I'll loosely define as our discretionary spending at the district level. As I look towards the end of the year, we'll likely have to be selective, not put a freeze on our spending, but selective in spending in terms of contracted services, materials and supplies, those types of things, to position us to end the year under budget. So I'm forecasting $50,000 worth of savings versus budget in those areas at the district level, and then $13,000 worth of office personnel PD savings. And the combination of those things gets us to around $75,000 favorable to that budget line. The next line item is forecasting capital operations and maintenance to be unfavorable to budget by $17,000, and that's made up principally of 2 items. An increase in the Director of Facilities and Grounds salary versus the original budget of roughly $12,000, and then a forecasted overage in custodial overtime, substitute coverage, and leave of absence coverage for the year. Forecasting guidance, counseling, and testing category to end the year on budget. Instructional materials to end the budget, $35,000 favorable to budget. And that's along the same lines that I talked about earlier. So this is anticipated savings in materials and supplies across the district within each of our schools, and again at the district level. So it's not stopping spending, but being more selective in our spending and making sure that we get the things that we need, but we put off the things that are nice to have until the new fiscal year kind of comes upon us in a couple of months.
And this is where like textbooks would be, right?
Yeah, textbooks.
So we had
books,
savings
paper.
from what we projected to what we actually purchased for the math materials, I think, last year too.
So those types of things, I don't recall off the top of my head, but those types of things would show up in that category.
Okay.
Yeah. The next account, DESE account, is instructional leadership. I'm forecasting that to end the year on budget. Insurance, retirement, and other, I'm forecasting to end the year approximately negative $40,000 versus budget, and that's entirely driven by an increase in the number of health care plan enrollees above what we budgeted for. So, you know, we make benefits accessible to our employees, and when there's a change of life event, a marriage, a child, a birth, those types of things, those aren't things that we can control necessarily, and they happen. And we've seen a slight uptick here in the last couple of months in the number of plan enrollees. So I'm forecasting that category to be negative $40,000. Other teaching services, forecasting to end the year negative $65,000. That's made up of three unfavorable variances. An increase in the high school, middle school librarian salary of $28,000 versus what we originally budgeted for FY19. That's the biggest driver. The second largest driver is I'm forecasting substitutes, which is comprised of long-term substitutes and daily substitutes, to exceed budget by $23,000 for the year. we've seen a significant increase in the number of long-term substitutes versus what we have ever seen historically, and those can come at a fairly substantial cost. And then the third element is our special ed summer programming cost exceeded budget last summer by $14,000. Next line, professional development. I'm forecasting that category to end the year 20,000 favorable, and that's really made up of savings in teacher PD and course reimbursements. You know, we budget, you know, in excess of $30,000 every year for course reimbursements, and since I've been here for 6 years, we've never spent that. So I'm forecasting that trend to continue. Pupil services, forecasting the end of year 20,000 favorable to budget, and basically we're forecasting the food service deficit to be less than what we budgeted. So that's a good thing. So if you recall, we increased the cost of the meals a year or so ago, and that in combination with the great job that Catherine and her team do, we've seen an increase in the number of the participation rates across the district, which has led to more revenues and those types of things. So I'm forecasting the deficit to be substantially less than what it has been in the past. Teacher salaries, which is our largest category, as you all know, I'm forecasting to end the year on budget. And then tuitions, I'm forecasting the end of the year $25,000 unfavorable to budget. Now realize that's the category where I'm going to be taking the $550,000 out of reserve to cover the anticipated overage. So what's left there is what I'm anticipating as an unfavorable variance to budget for charter school out students. So when a student that resides in Hamilton or Wenham goes to a charter school, we're charged for that. This year, I don't believe we budgeted any because it comes off the cherry sheet basically. So, and we have either one or two, it keeps going back and forth, 1 or 2 students that are going to charter schools, and we get charged for that. So it is what it is basically. So I'm forecasting, you know, fingers crossed to end the year right on budget.
That was in the House budget. The governor had us with 1, and the House had us with 0 charter students. I was like,
That don't make sense.
Right, which is it?
It is what it is, and you guys need to figure out what it is.
It is what it is, right. So, yeah, I'm pleased to say that things seem to have stabilized since the beginning of the year, when kind of the necessity of using the reserve account kind of reared its ugly head. It's fluid, right? So, and there's still a lot of landing strip left. So, hopefully it doesn't, we don't get any more surprises. But if we do, I'll update you in the next forecast. So are there any questions?
So last year you forecasted a little bit higher than this, but around this. But yet, when it came to the end, am I right? 150,000 about went into E&D.
Yeah.
So
No. But no.
And why not?
But keep going. Yeah.
It wasn't?
No. But yeah, there's a lot of accounts that go into E&D, not just the variance that you see through expense categories.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, even though this number was here, we still had other monies that was sort of, I don't want to say leftover, because that's not the right word.
All right, so let me see if I can help answer the question. So E&D is complex, and it's made up of several different types of accounts.
Yeah.
So the things that can lend itself to accumulating a larger E&D account are the favorable variance in your expense categories. And then things like additional Chapter 70.
Oh, right. Okay,
monies,
okay,
right?
Which you couldn't spend because it
can't
wasn't
spend
on,
that
because you have a ceiling.
Right.
Now I,
Additional Medicaid monies that you didn't budget, those kinds of things. So those are really the accounts that generate the excess E&D above and beyond the school committee's policy that we ultimately give back. It's really, since I've been here, because we've developed such a really tight process, it's never really been the expense accounts that have generated the excess E&D that we provided, if that makes any sense.
That
Okay.
exactly makes sense.
And I
yes.
don't anticipate this year to be any different.
Yep.
Hopefully. But I know there's excess chapter 70.
There was
I
some
know
excess.
there's
It was like
40,000.
40.
Yeah,
something.
I know there's excess chapter 71 money. I
Yeah.
know we put into the
Regional.
regional
Yeah.
transportation reserve that we're not gonna use again, 25 grand, so
Yeah.
we'll give that back.
Yeah.
I know there'll be extra Medicaid money. So those things, at the end of the year, when we finish the audit and we submit the E&D for certification to the DOR in September or October, it'll be all of those things that will generate that excess
Yep.
E&D.
That makes sense.
Okay.
So Jeff, do you know if there's a particular reason why there's an uptick in long-term subs?
Yeah, so they go hand in hand with leaves of absences.
Yeah.
So if you see an uptick in FMLA leaves for
Yeah.
any one of the four
Yeah.
qualifying reasons,
Okay.
predominantly birth of a child,
Yep.
then you see an uptake in long-term service, long-term
Right.
substitutes.
Yeah, we experienced that
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
Okay,
so
all right,
that's-
just to make sure, I was curious.
That's what it is.
So that's what we're seeing this year, not for just that reason.
No, there's been
but
The
there's-
insurance.
other FMLA
Insurance,
health
too.
related.
Sure, yeah.
Uptake in ticket insurance
so-
because
Could.
of that. Because if there's childbirth, then
Right, so that's a qualifying reason to, to go back and switch from a single to a family plan. So,
And
yeah,
when-
they're all connected.
And when someone retires and we're hiring someone who's got 5 years' experience,
Exactly.
they're
Right.
generally a lot younger than the person who retired. They're
Right.
generally in childbirth years
Yep.
versus
Yeah.
in, thank God, not childbirth
Right.
years anymore. You know?
And we produce, and we generate and develop our fiscal year budget sometimes
Knowing.
15, 16, 18 months in advance of what's really gonna happen, so.
They don't even know they're going to have a baby.
They
yet.
don't even know.
They don't even know they're going to be
Right.
married yet. sometimes.
Exactly. So if you think about the FY20 budget that's just been approved, we've developed that not knowing who's going to retire, who's going to be out on leave, who's going to be having babies, I'll know those kinds of things. So there's a lot of variables that go into everything that we try to forecast and incorporate into our budget.
Or knee replacements. Those are going around right now.
Yes, there's a lot of knee replacements. Hopefully
Thank
not
you.
need one.
Hopefully.
Thank you, Jeff.
So like I said, I'll do another one next month, and
Yep.
hopefully it won't change much.
Yeah. Did you see Woburn? They
No.
got news like $290,000. It's
going around. It's going around lately.
Like the
Yeah.
flu.
I was like, what?
That's small for a town like Woburn.
Well, but it's
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
All right. Now for the busy stuff. Selecting interim superintendent semifinalists.
I'll wait until.
So just to sort of refresh our timeline that we'd agreed upon, excuse me, March 27th, the school committee approved interim job listing. April 1st or before, the job posting listed on the MASC, MASS, and School Spring websites. April 19th, deadline for submitting applications. April 24th, which is tonight, is the semifinalists selected. April 29th through May 7th is the semifinalist interviews. May 8th is the finalists are selected. May 22nd, the finalist interviews. Will be a school committee decision. And then July 1st, the interim superintendent would begin.
And I guess he's gone, but do we know if Mike is going to be taking vacation before the end of his term? So, and if that, then we need the superintendent to start sooner,
So
interim.
most likely Mike will be done the middle of June.
Okay. So then we would need someone to start before July 1st.
Or well, he would still be superintendent until,
Right.
I mean, it's just like any other time he'd be on vacation. Yeah.
Okay.
I know that he'll be back in a minute,
Right.
so you can ask him, but I know he has time,
Right.
and I know that there's a language in the contract that says that he can't be paid beyond his last day. So it almost, and I don't remember the exact language, but, so it almost forces him to take whatever vacation time he has.
Use or lose.
Yeah, use or lose, and he earned it, so.
Yeah.
I know he's got at least 10 days.
Right.
At least.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no.
But he knows, I'm sure.
I don't think he's leaving tomorrow. I have asked him, you know, like, he doesn't have that much time, so.
Oh, he doesn't have much more than 10 days.
Right,
I know
so-
that. Not that I'm watching it, but.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, they just said there's only like 34 school days left.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously there's more days, but until the end of June, but not that many more days.
Right.
So, but yeah, when he comes back, we can ask him to be sure.
So we go over this again? So April 29th through May 7th
Right. So
is
that's really
a
what I wanna
range of
get to.
time when we'll have the interviews, and depending on how many people we pick, we'll determine how many days we need.
Right.
Right.
So, and that's sort of, I think, what we need to figure out right now is how that is going to be. So obviously, this is, you know, for Michelle's benefit, truncated just because of the length of time we have to actually get someone into place. Excuse me. As you know, we only meet every other week formally. So when I put this timeline together, it's like, well, this is the only time it has. You know, I try to give us enough time to try and figure out days that we could do something together to give it enough play there. But at the same time, it is definitely truncated and going to be pretty busy.
And I also sent a memo that Glenn and/or Dorothy can help those days too, but we would need to let them know ASAP.
So just for argument's sake, looking at the 29th is Monday coming up, and that would run through next Tuesday. So it gives us sort of the better part of a week and a half to get through this. I think going through the surprisingly long list of candidates, I was kind of thinking, I was taken back to when we had to fill the school committee seat for the town of Hamilton, and we had the large pool of candidates. And one thing, my suggestion on one way that we could sort of begin this discussion would be to go around the table, have everyone pick their top 3 candidates, and that way we could see if there's anyone just eliminated right off the bat, and then begin discussions from that point. Because I think at that point we could sort of see if, are their semifinalists going to be 3 or are they going to be 5? And we might be able to get rid of some variables there, which will then help us to navigate the semifinalist interviews.
So,
And I'm open for suggestions. That's just my suggestion on how I think we should move forward.
I think that you're right in that. But I think this is a long list, and I think we might want to look at having, when we go around, 5 to 6 people, and then from there we can decide how many total number of candidates we want to interview. I mean, do we want to try and have all the interviews on one night?
Well, I mean, it depends what we end up
Right,
with
'cause-
for the final number. Like I said, I think that's where the variables sort of add in. But while we have Mike sitting here, Mike, we were actually wondering when you think that your last day is going to be.
It'll be June 14th,
June 14th?
actually.
All right, so that's 2 weeks.
That's 35 days.
Sad face.
44.
Possibly could be the last day of school too.
That is,
We just haven't voted, I'm just
Yeah,
saying.
it is.
That's
It
why
will
I'm
be the
saying
last day of school.
possibly.
It's possibly the last.
If
Because
we-
we haven't
Could be a
voted.
hail
Knock on wood, it could
tornado
snow.
come through.
It could
Right,
snow.
It could snow. There's no
Oh, there
England.
could be all kinds of calamities.
Way to wait out and see the snow days and all that good stuff.
Well,
All right, so do we
so
have
I
like
don't.
a board or a way of
Excuse
keeping
me?
track?
Last
All right, do you have like a way of keeping track, or how do you want to?
Well, I was actually just thinking of kicking off on here.
Okay.
Like tally marks?
Yeah.
Yep.
Do you,
I can
I can
tell.
do that.
You
I
wanna
mean,
tell it?
yeah, I can tally.
I think if, let's just put out there, we'll say pick your top candidates. If you have 5 or 6 that you like, I guess name them. If you have 2, name them. And that, like I said, that way I think we could see where we are, and then it'll help narrow down the process. Does,
We're doing this now.
Yeah.
that,
It's this, because I wrote on this side. That's what I had.
so I'm wondering how I should sort of do this protocol wise. Does anyone want to start, or?
I'll start since I'm the newbie. First choice, Jeff Sands. Second, Kuska from Weymouth.
I'm so, can you,
What's the name?
The
That's
Kuska?
Kuska from Weymouth.
Susan.
Colanino. Galvin. And McElduff.
I'm sorry, did you say
McAuliffe.
McAlduff?
McAuliffe, McElduff. McAuliffe.
McAlduff. Okay.
Yeah.
You want to just go,
Michelle?
Michelle?
Yeah, I'm trying to find the other, okay. I have Matthew Joseph, Julie Kuchenberger, Herb Levine, William McAuliffe, and Jeff Sands.
You say Will McAuliffe?
Yep.
Yep.
So mine are Sands, McAuliffe, and Levine.
Wait, hold on. What was the first one? Oh, Sands,
Yeah. that guy.
McAuliffe, and Levine. Okay. Levine?
Those are my 3 as well. I only had 3.
Sands, McAuliffe, Levine. Okay. So I had Kuchenberger, Levine, McAuliffe, and Sands.
And I have Herb Levine, Bill McElduff, and Jeff Sands.
And I haven't had a chance to look at these yet.
Okay.
I've just been too busy. But the only one I would know that to include on my list as it stands right now would be Mr. Sands.
All right, so what that does is that eliminates Diaz, McGee, the Ruggier, Stellar, and Zaleski. So, yeah, Zaleski. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we're down to 8. So we definitely still need to narrow that down.
Well, does it
There's
make?
only other one person that has 2 votes. Everybody else just has 1.
So, I mean, do we think to, I'm sorry, what are you suggesting? I don't want to.
I'm just saying, like, this Anthony person has 1, Lori has 1, Matthew has 1.
Susan
this-
has one.
Julie has 2, and Susan has
Yeah,
1.
well,
So there's
then
really only other
Joseph
one person that's
has
got
I'll have 1.
more than
So
1
maybe,
vote.
should we possibly narrow down the 1, just so we can get a smaller pool of 5 or 6 people?
That's up to, I have no
I'm just
problem with
making
that,
that
but at the same
suggestion
time,
that maybe.
those aren't my people, too, so I would hate to just.
So
Well, it seems to make sense, is it's heavily weighted on Levine, McAuliffe, and Sands.
Yeah, but we could just interview 3, but I've had experiences where you get interviewing and then
Right.
somebody finds out they're gonna have surgery, or somebody's wife is gonna this,
Right.
or.
Maybe we add a couple
So-
more, maybe who have a couple of votes?
The only
Well,
other
the only
person
one
with
would be
more than
Julie.
one is Julie Kuchenberger.
So, I guess right now what we're deciding is, are we going to eliminate the single votes and then just go with anyone with 2 votes or more?
Well, should we look at Anthony's qualifications? and
Excuse
go
me?
through- Should we just quick,
I'm fine with that. I don't know if it's really necessary to go,
Okay.
unless anyone feels passionate about one of the persons that they nominated.
Right,
I'm
that's why
fine
I
with-
didn't want to make this sort of assumption of. this
I mean,
moving
I
in.
thought that, I think Lori's the one who's like, is she the special ed director, or is she the one that's,
Winthrop, Assistant Superintendent.
she's the Winthrop Assistant Superintendent, okay.
And I know she
So,
wants to be a superintendent.
Like, I mean, I could,
I didn't think I saw her name on a couple finalists.
I mean, if I were going to pick another person, I would have picked her.
Yeah, I would
But-
pick her too.
This is Gallivan?
No,
Gallivan,
yeah,
Gallivan.
Gallivan.
So can I make a suggestion about how to approach this, which is, this is my suggestion, about thinking about like what do we want, like, because the school committee is going to be basically setting the interim superintendent's goal. So maybe I would suggest that we try to think about what do we want this person to accomplish in the year? Or what do we need from a district perspective in the year, right? And then look at the skill sets of the people beyond the top 3 and see if there's any of that other set that maybe, 1 or 2 who would come back in
Right.
to the interview pool,
Okay.
right? Again, suggestion, but I'm thinking like, for me, what concerns me is stability for the districts, right? We're not in a failing district. There's no schools that needs improvement. There's no turnaround needs. There's no whatever. We need to make sure that we have strong financial, controls and all those sorts of things. And we know that we have a big year ahead of us with the custodial negotiation, Long Meadow, those sorts of things. And so I would suggest, like, beyond the top 3 vote getters, is there anybody else in that set who has at least what you individually would think as having the skill sets or the experience that
Right.
you think we need?
So let me
That's what I would say.
look at this.
To
real
me,
quick.
I still would only pick the 3 that I did. So,
So in that vein, I don't mind sort of speaking next in that one thing I was looking for besides the consistency was just regional experience. And that's why I went with the 3 that I did. I'm actually trying to look up Julie's resume again, just because I don't have to remember that. I'm not gonna
I
pretend
looked at it
to.
quite a bit. She jumped around quite a bit.
So,
2 years. She did have some, in New Jersey, some teaching experience, but then she jumped from Haverhill to, if this is the right one, Kuchen, and has been in Scarborough for a very short term, and chose not to renew her contract, because there was some controversy.
Lori.
What about Dr. Kestka? She's a
Susan.
very strong showing from
Just to Jean's point, I too think we should think about a person that's going to come in and know who or don't impose who they are on us, and work with the administration and the teachers, and know that they're here for a year,
Yep.
And like you're saying, just to steady the ship.
Yep.
And then step back and let someone else lead the way.
Yep, I agree.
So Susan, who had one vote, she lists her areas of expertise as including the contract negotiations. So it looks like she says negotiation of all 7 collective bargaining agreements directly with the school committee in her experience in Weymouth. So that's something that is a skill we're looking for.
That was.
This is actually Susan. She only has one vote,
Krista.
but
Kuska.
Kusta.
Kuska.
Whoever comes can all get lessons on how to say their names.
You know, what's particularly interesting about her is that she has like both the academic experience as well as the business administration
Yeah.
side.
Yeah, no, I would,
In the classroom, yeah,
Yeah.
experience, theory, and
yeah. Yeah,
So, you
Okay.
might know, to know I had both Julie and Susan in my original cut. But they didn't make my sort of final, but I was also determined to go in at 3. But I also thought my 3 were more ideal for what I was looking for. So while I guess what I'm saying is that I still stand behind my 3, I would not be opposed to interviewing either one of those as a semifinalist.
I mean, I think a pool of 4 is a reasonable size to manage, especially if we don't have that much time to interview. I mean, I don't want to just
Yeah.
cut people from consideration just because of our time limits, but it is a factor. We don't have
Well,
that
I mean,
whole lot of
it's
time.
something you have to do.
So
Yeah.
I'm one of the people who said, Julian, I could easily, using that framework,
Yeah,
be persuaded that Susan is a better candidate when you compare those 2
yep,
skill sets side by side.
yep,
Yeah.
yep. I can agree, I can get to there, yeah.
Mhm.
I don't know if you just made it more clear or more cloudy.
So in my mind, I think Jean and I think we should have Susan, Herb, William McAuliffe, and Jeffrey Sands.
Yeah,
And again, I don't disagree, but for me, it's a toss-up between Susan and Julie.
Okay, so,
did you Google Julie
So,
in Scarborough? Just,
the,
there is controversy there,
yeah.
but I've also heard that
right, because some of these
might
do have some backstory.
not have been entirely her fault.
I know, there's always 2 sides.
There's
3
always,
sides.
or
3
3.
sides. His side, her side, in the middle.
Do we want to do 5?
Oh, that just puts more pressure on us to get 5 interviews done.
Well, are you going to try and do 4 in one night?
Again, that's us for decide. I don't want to, while I'm happy to sort of take a lead, I also want to get your feedback on what you guys think is reasonable and feasible.
So to me, when we did the town administrator search, we narrowed it down to 3 so that we could have all the interviews in one night.
Right.
So I think if you're going to do 4, you're going to need 2 nights, so you may as well do 5. And I do think there's 4 strong candidates here, but. Because, so we're basically, I feel like right now, what we're doing is coming down to our finalists,
Right.
right? So there's really only going to be 1 round of interviews.
So that was sort of my next,
And
you
it
know.
sounds to me like the timeline is we're going to have the interviews and then we'll make a decision on the 8th. Is that,
that would be different than what's posted, but that doesn't mean that doesn't need to, right, because we have finalist interviews afterwards, right? So May 8th on our timeline
interesting.
should have been plural originally,
Okay.
Yeah.
but,
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Or it just gives you more time to do a
Correct.
pool of 4.
right.
I
Yeah,
guess
so
that-
do we want to do,
it's ours to decide, right?
do we want to do 5 and then re-interview? Or do we want to do like just 4 and just call it a day? I mean, do we want
Well,
to have more time
is
with
there,
them?
is there a fifth candidate that people can get behind? Because I think
I
it
can get
seems
behind
like,
Susan.
Susan Kuska.
I could also get behind Julie, so I'm good either way.
Okay, let me just refresh my,
Right.
Julie.
I know, because there's a lot of them here.
Oh, Scarborough, yes, this woman, yep. Julie.
Now you're going to make me read Matthew Joseph. A, B, C, D, F, G, H, I, J, K, G, H, I, J. G, H, I, J, K.
I would also say that we just don't want a placeholder. We want someone, like I said earlier, that knows our district and is going
Right.
to keep us sound.
No, I agree with you there. At first, I was wondering what you
What
meant
is
by
in
that,
that
but no, I
placeholder?
definitely
It
agree.
just-
See you later, Jen. That, you know, again, so that's why, you know, I was looking for someone who, that met the qualifications, but had that regional, right, so, excuse me. That's why the 3 really stood out the most to me.
Mhm.
You know, because it seems that all 3 of them could come in here pretty seamlessly, just judging by their resumes.
Mhm.
The fact that one is actually here. No, and I think Susan, right, just didn't have, I think that was one of the,
Yeah, so what if we do a pool of 4, and we do 2 interviews one night and 2 interviews another night?
Sounds manageable.
Mhm.
So we need to decide if our 4th is Susan or Julie. Or somebody else.
Well, between Susan and Julie, Susan stood out more to me.
Me too.
Yeah,
Mhm.
who stood out more? I'm sorry.
Susan,
Kuska.
yeah.
Mhm. It's her decision, but I was thinking practically, I'm like, she's really going to come from the South Shore over the Tobin Bridge every day? But that's her decision.
Yeah, and you'd
But
be
you gotta-
surprised,
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
in education, people even come from like Western Massachusetts, and,
Yeah.
I mean, we have people who work in this district that come from
Mhm.
northern New Hampshire.
And the thing for Susan, too, is you see the dedication she had to her school district. And that's what struck me more so. And she does have the experience, a few more years under her belt than the other, Julie,
Mhm.
so.
Mhm. So I say we go with a pool of 4 over 2 nights.
I agree, and I will,
And do we want those nights to be the 2 nights that Dorothy and/or Glenn could come and sort of take notes, give feedback?
Probably would be good to get their feedback.
Assuming that these people can meet those nights. I
Yeah.
think it's the
Assuming-
May 1st, is it the 29th of
Second
April, the May
or the-
1st, or?
But
I don't remember. I think there's a,
April 29th and May 7th is the window that we said.
I know, but Dorothy and Glenn said they were available on 2 specific nights.
Oh, is that
I
right?
did, Was that from?
That was from Stacy in the email of all the resumes, I think. Oh, that's the wrong.
Yep, April 30th, May 1st, or May 2nd.
Oh, perfect.
So the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Yeah, so we could call Glenn, right? Tell him these are our 4 candidates, and then he can maneuver it on those 3 nights.
Yeah.
But group it on 2. If the rest of us are available those nights, but if we're not, then we should tell him which 2 nights to pick.
First, I am definitely open.
Calendar. So this way.
Second, I'm already double booked.
Okay, so you can't do the 2nd?
Yes, but at the
Okay.
same time, I don't want to,
But you can do the 30th and the 1st?
yes, how do I have 3 softball games that day?
Tuesday and then Wednesday. Tuesday. I can do the 30th and the 1st. Peter, are you available the 30th and the 1st? Peter?
I'm sorry?
Are you available the 30th, which is a Tuesday next week, and the 1st, which is Wednesday next week?
Well, are we speaking about evening hours?
Oh, I think so, yeah.
Oh,
Don't- Were you thinking earlier than 7?
no.
Were you thinking later than 7?
No, I'm sorry. I was thinking 7-ish.
7-ish.
Yep. I just wanted to make sure we weren't talking about daytime hours.
Oh, I don't, yeah. Are you available, Jenny? Okay.
Well, actually, on the 30th, I'm working from home, believe it or not. So,
Wow, that is like a treat.
well, I'm not really free until about 6, a little after 6. But
That commute's way easier than Boston, though.
yeah, it's just Beverly.
Are you available those 2 nights? I know
But
there's
I can
probably
do any of those
baseball.
3 nights. I think I can do any of those 3 nights.
And then
Same here.
even that Thursday, I might have to miss the beginning, but could probably hit the end of a meeting.
All right, so
Is there a better time on Thursday?
I just have.
Better start.
would we be better to start at 6?
Like if-
Or would
no,
we be better
it
to
would
start at 7?
Later's better for me.
Okay,
But again,
so,
let's move forward if we can get 5 people in the room.
okay.
You know,
Are you
Yep, I'm
available?
fine. Yep.
So do you want me to call Glenn and say,
There's
can
a-
you guys book only 2 of these nights,
Yeah.
starting at 7, and we want 2 people each night?
Yeah, I think that sounds good.
And we're
So-
saying,
And who are we going to say?
So,
Well,
Herb, Bill,
Yep.
Jeff. And
and
it's
Susan.
Susan.
And Susan.
Susan.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, Dr. Kuska, Dr. Levine, right?
Mhm.
Yep.
McAuliffe and
Okay. Yeah, I'm happy to do that. And then, so then we'll have to have those posted no later than Friday. So I will call Glenn tomorrow, early. Actually, I'll email him tonight and then I'll call him and talk to him tomorrow.
Sounds great. Thank
Okay.
you. That was pretty painless.
We haven't interviewed them yet.
It's,
We haven't interviewed them yet.
Yeah.
No, just when I saw this pool of candidates, I'm like,
It's
how
great.
the heck are we
It's
gonna get this
amazing that we
down?
got
These are-
13, though.
it's a
These are-
great pool.
Yeah.
We're
And I'm
a
looking
strong
for- you know,
district.
and one thing I want to say, in case anyone's watching here, what I'm looking for in an interim is not necessarily the same thing I'm looking for in a long-term superintendent.
Yep.
So I encourage everybody in more to, once we begin that process, to reapply, because the guidelines that are going to be, in my mind, of, you know, who I'm looking for, what I'm looking for, are going to be different.
Are we going to meet to, or do questions?
I
What
think
we're,
we need to. So do we want,
'Cause
yeah,
it's
that was
next
what I was
week.
going to ask. Do we want to, so Glenn, and I sent the questions that people can use, and I printed off copies of those for everybody. So do we want to meet like at us meet at 6:30 and have the interview start at 7? Do we want to meet at
that'd
7
probably be
and
great.
have the interview start at 7:30? Because I think Michelle's right that we need to
No, I agree. I
decide
agree.
what questions we're going to ask, who's going to ask them, or do we want to put that off to a subcommittee who's going to like meet before the meeting, or what do we want to do?
No, I like the idea of meeting a little bit earlier and then starting the interview a little bit later to whittle it down.
So
I
maybe,
think one thing we should sort of think about on our own leading into it is, do we want 10 questions? Because 10
Well-
questions would probably take,
I think it
what, an
depends
hour
on
and a half?
if this the one time we're going to interview them, or are we going to then whittle this pool down to 3 or 2 or,
Semifinalists.
yeah.
Well, can you ask Glenn what the process is, normal process? What's the norm? Do you ask
we have the
4 or
wiggle
5?
room to do either, so.
Yeah,
because we
I
haven't
mean, he
done
said,
semifinalists.
you could interview them once and then interview them twice if you wanted, or you could just, I think, sure, we can ask Glenn.
Do the questions just come from the school committee, or do they come from the public as well?
I guess we can put out there right now that if someone has a question that we can throw into the pool that, before we begin the interviews, we
Yeah.
come up with our final questions and.
Do we want to save that though for the superintendent search?
Oh, yeah.
And say that this is just, the warm-up, pregame.
Right, in this pregame.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that I imagine that Glenn is going to say things that I've heard on other committees when I've been in the school district, like, we're going to ask every person the same questions.
Right.
So we need to figure out what the best questions are for what we need, so. All right, so I guess we can decide afterwards if we're going to whittle them down, or
Is it whittle them down?
yeah, are we going to whittle them down? No, are we going to whittle down the candidates, or are we considering these to be our finalists? I
So
guess-
the original thought process that we would whittle down the semifinalists to finalists. Again, we had 3 clear, and then 1 we sort of pushed for semifinalists. Does that mean, one's gonna stand out from there?
Well-
It could go either way.
Do we, I mean, how, this is public, the process is public.
Very public, yeah.
We stated the process, so I don't want to get into a situation where a candidate not chosen can accuse us of not following a public process.
Right.
So I don't know what it means to be a semifinalist and then a finalist, because we could have one finalist and interview that person yet again,
Right.
right? And we would have honored the process. It could be that from the 4, we just pick 2 finalists and then do a more in-depth, more unscripted set of questions that we develop, or that we just have the 1 and just pepper this person with a lot of things about, what are they
Yeah.
going to do?
So
But
it's-
I think I wouldn't necessarily want to just jump from 4 to, hey, you're the guy, or you're the person.
Okay.
Because again, I don't want to get in a situation where like,
Right. No, I agree.
So do we want to set aside like an hour for the interview, or do we want to set aside like 45 minutes, 30 minutes?
yeah,
Because to me, if I'm only going to interview them once, I want an hour. But if I'm going to interview them twice, then I'm like, 45 minutes, 30 minutes might be good enough.
I think the latter.
yeah,
45 minutes.
yeah.
Because at the same time, we probably want to, discuss it in between, which gives us a few hours each night, and then, to move down to a.
Yep,
sem-
so
a
I'll tell him that for scheduling
It could be
purposes.
this. I mean, maybe
Yeah,
ask
finalists
Glenn,
rather.
like, you can run through the standard set of questions. Everybody gets the same set of questions, right? In the first round. We will it down to, say, 2. And then we do our follow-up based on what their initial responses were. Hey, you said this last time. Can you expand on
Yeah,
that? Da, da, da.
okay.
Right? Because, if the committee of 7, we're asking follow-up questions all the time, we're never going to get off of
Right.
and that, when we did the Hamilton town manager search, that was the
Yeah.
hardest part, is that we ran out of time to do a lot of follow-up questions it was a committee of 7, I think,
Yeah.
with a lot of candidates, 6 candidates, I think, at
Yeah.
the time, too. So maybe maybe the way to do it. since we
Right.
have that second interview already
Right, already there.
on
Yep.
the calendar, yeah.
Right, so I didn't really envision the first round of interviews as being open to dialogue,
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
right? Is
I
that,
agree.
so we have our concrete,
Mhm.
we ask, they answer,
Yep.
and that's, and not the, oh, well, what, oh, you said this, what if? I would suspect that, or I would expect that that open, more communicative interview style would be for finalists.
Yep.
Which would be, I think, I can't remember who suggested it, but as we're all sort of taking notes based on the first round of interviews, then we can sort of hone it down to, well, this stood out to me that this candidate said, why don't we explore that
Mhm. Okay.
more deeply?
Okay, so I'll ask Glenn to schedule the interviews for 45 minutes, 15-minute break in between, and then another 45 minutes. Okay. And then, so a lot of times these things are televised so that we can get feedback. Do we want to record them so that candidates in day 2 don't see what happens in day 1, record both sets, then televise them so that if people want to,
Look at you thinking ahead.
That is a good question.
So,
Well, we
Because there was
can't
other
keep
questions
it
if it's
open,
televised.
correct, so we can't give 2 candidates on the first night the upper hand, on the
Right.
second night, the
Yeah.
upper hand.
exactly, yeah.
but it's
So
an
we
open-
could
it's an
record
open
it, but
meeting
not
anyway, they
show
could be
it.
sitting in the audience.
Right.
Yeah, but they won't,
Just
because
guys.
anybody who wants to be professional wouldn't.
Right.
Right. No, and I
Would
mean,
not do that.
these candidates are been
Yeah.
around the block. It's not their first, you
Right.
know.
It's not their first rodeo.
So
Right.
it is an open meeting,
Sure.
but unlike a meeting like tonight, we are not opening it to citizens to interact with the committee.
Right.
So is it appropriate and legal to record, as Michelle suggested, both, and then put them out on the second night?
Woman asked
Naomi?
Naomi.
I mean, it seems to be the only, I mean, this can't be the first time this has ever come up, so that would seem to be the most appropriate way.
I think that's the way we did it.
And again, if
With
citizens
Dr.
want to come in
Harvey
and
as well.
watch, they can, and if they communicate to the other candidates or whatnot,
Right.
that's beyond our control.
Yeah.
But as long as there's no open forum for dialogue to go back and forth, and that anyone who does come in to attend the interviews would understand, there's no questions, we're not opening the floor, if you will.
It's a meeting in public, not a public meeting.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So for the next meeting, we should look at these questions and develop our own
Huh?
questions, so we're ready? David, maybe?
It's an open meeting, record it, and then play it at a different.
We don't have to ask that of
You don't
Naomi.
even have to record it.
Yeah, but if you wanted to get feedback,
Yeah.
that would, you know
Do
what I
we
mean?
want feedback?
I'm already getting it on my phone.
I know, mine's,
My phone's
is it a
been
neighbor of
texting.
ours?
I think the best thing to do is record it and broadcast it later.
Yeah,
To keep it, again, so that there are no questions about who said what and
Yeah.
what happened.
and it's
I think
also
it-
good for us too, because when you're going to make those follow-ups, you can actually, if you needed to kind of clarify something in your mind, you can go back and see what it is. Yeah. Okay.
How do we tell HWCAM that we want to record it but not broadcast?
I'm sure there's a way to do it.
Oh, I should-
You know
oh, I
what?
kn- I
They'll be
know there is a
watching
way to
this
do it.
tomorrow as they.
Okay, I didn't
put it
know if there's like a
online.
formal, like, hey, we want to.
Yeah, you should let
Okay.
Bill
But-
Melville know.
Yeah.
Does Donna do that? Is that how that
Bill
happens? or-
Melville, right?
Would you tell Donna that?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know how they know to come up and show up here.
Donna calls him.
Okay. I was like, there has to be a system.
So the other thing about these questions is that we have to make sure that they make sense to the candidate when we ask
Right.
them.
Yeah.
Right.
Because I'm reading some of these
Right,
and they don't make sense to
right,
me.
They're not applicable, which.
Some
which
of
is
them might not
easy
be
to edit
applicable
out.
to this, yeah.
Right.
Yep. And there was one here, it was like, the number 5 one, I think you're supposed to fill in the blank there. Like, what is the most important
Right.
thing, and fill in the blank. So,
So maybe what we should do is, if these are draft, obviously draft questions, so so are we thinking that Glenn or Dorothy's going to ask the questions? No.
usually did they do that on the town administrators? Like,
Yeah.
Carrie's always gonna ask number 1, Peter's always gonna
Oh,
ask
yeah,
number 2,
yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
always gonna ask number 3.
When we did it for the Hamilton side, the consultant asked all the questions, and
Oh, interesting.
and we had and some of the committee members would ask a follow-up every so often.
Oh, no.
Yeah, no follow-ups.
Right.
Every time I've done it, it's been like in the district,
Everybody
and then
says-
also over in Wenham, it was like everybody was assigned a question.
Okay.
And not necessarily everybody had to ask a question if we didn't have enough
Sure.
questions.
Yeah. Okay.
We can do it however you want.
Yeah, it
As
doesn't really matter.
someone who, my job every day is asking questions,
Yeah.
I don't mind doing it if other people don't want to, so.
It
I
might be
usually-
good for the first
That's right. You're a
round.
professional question asker.
That might be good for the first round,
Yeah.
you know?
I'm just comfortable asking questions.
Where are you on
All right. So okay.
All right, then I'm going to suggest Carrie be the question asker.
Again, I'm not imposing, I just
Yeah.
am happy to do it.
Yeah, it's sometimes easier for a candidate to feel comfortable when it's coming from one person. You know what I mean? Like, it's
Yeah.
yeah. All right. Are you now in charge, Jean?
No, Carrie.
Okay.
Carrie's the vice chair.
Oh, Carrie, are you now in charge?
I
Are we
can't-
moving on to the next thing, or are we waiting for?
Well, I think what we need to figure out is like, what questions do we actually want to ask?
Are we going to do that right now?
I don't know. I mean, because we can either do it in the 30 minutes before,
We're
which
technically not posted to do that right now.
Yeah, so when we do
Okay,
it in
got
30
it,
minutes
all right.
before. Okay.
that's a good enough answer.
So maybe we can, I hope that we can come prepared with pare down what we think are the most important questions,
Yeah,
so that we have some guidance, because 30 minutes is not a long time.
right. Like everybody should come with like 2 or 3 pre-written questions, and then we may all have similar questions, and we can
Yeah.
just, yeah. Okay.
So what you missed,
I heard most of it.
okay.
He was live streaming it on his phone.
All right.
It's just actually really loud over there.
Is there more to talk about?
On this part, I don't think so.
Everyone feel comfortable moving forward?
Yep.
Peter? Michelle?
Uh-huh.
Great. No, that was great work, guys. All right.
I'm sorry, just how many of we're working with these questions, we're narrowing it down to how many?
Yeah, and if you have another question you want to bring up, you can,
Like,
however many, you know what I mean?
And
Some-
then we'll discuss it right before.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
very good.
But you should probably come with the 1 or 2 you think has to
The
be.
ones
on
that
it.
really
You're-
stand, because I'm assuming that they're all,
This is what I want to know tonight.
there's probably going to be at least one question that's consistent amongst the 7 of us.
Yep.
So,
And who will let us know when the meeting is? Dave, you will?
I think Michelle.
Yeah, I'll
Okay,
get
so
to Glenn, and Glenn will tell us when they're scheduled, and he'll have to tell us by Friday, so we'll know by Friday. Because, well, if he doesn't tell us by Friday, then there's definitely going to be Wednesday and Thursday.
Right. Thank you, everybody, for the flexibility. I know this timeline is really tight, and this is not an easy time of year for anybody, so I appreciate this, but. All right, moving forward, nominate the Ed Fund for MASC Outstanding School Partner Award. So. You have the
I didn't have
stuff
anything.
in here. So, Michelle Bailey. You are the most familiar with this award.
Yeah, so it came in that book that the MASC sent us.
I get sent
About-
so many books by them though, so I don't know.
Yeah, but this one is about well, it has the thing about the resolution. It's about the meeting in November. So it has the thing about the resolutions, and there was a couple of awards in there.
It's
And we
so
talked
weird.
about this last year, and we had agreed
Right,
last year to
that
nominate
was
them,
my
but then
fault.
we
I
didn't
remember dropping
actually
the ball on that.
do it. But I think that's because of the short time frame. Now we're kind of like earlier, because I think they're not due to the end of May.
Oh, okay, all right, so this isn't, so.
Like last time, it was like we had one meeting in between. Now we have like two or three.
Right,
Now we have
okay.
a lot of meetings in between. So it didn't,
Are you still the chair of the MA?
I've just, yes and no. I'm not the face anymore.
Well, anyway.
I am on the board, yes.
We are very thankful for all the work you do for us in this school district. And there is the Massachusetts Association of School Committees has this award for partners, the community partners, that we feel we'd really like to nominate the Ed Fund for all the work they've done for our, for our district over the course of many years at this point. As Michelle just said, we tried to do this last year, but we had such a short window. I ended up dropping the ball and actually sending in the application. So this year we're trying to sort of just get the conversation started sooner, so we can actually get the nomination in, and again, just recognize all the great work that you guys do. I have to figure out which. Well, it should be right on the MASC site, right?
yeah, I'm looking for
for
it
Yeah,
here.
I don't think it requires anything of the Ed Fund to do. It's the school committee
Right.
sort of just nominating
Okay,
Ed
great.
Fund for honor, statewide honor. If it, yeah.
Great, thanks. I'll share with the committee at our meeting in 2 weeks.
Oh, good.
Thank you.
I mean, we might need to ask them information. You know what I mean, like,
You can ask me.
because we don't actually keep track of the money, we just.
No, I don't.
So you-
I know you know how it goes, yeah. So do we want to do that?
Yes, I think we do want to do that.
I can't, I should have brought my
I
book.
just have to find the award.
I'm trying to,
Yeah.
I can't log in for some reason, my computer's not there.
So Michelle, do you have the book at home?
I do.
All
I can bring it next week, and then,
right, yeah, because we'll have open meetings next week that we can,
yeah,
this constitutes an open meeting.
and then we can just
Post for it.
decide if,
Yeah.
You gotta
Yeah,
put
we
that on
can-
the agenda.
because even then we'd have plenty of time.
Yeah, but if
I'll
she-
bring
what
the
I'm
book
saying is
next
if she
week, and we'll
brings that
decide what
to-
information we need.
All right,
Okay,
yeah, good point.
all right.
All right, so we okay with that? Good. All right, we have one donation on here. Ronnie Landworks.
So the secretary usually makes the motions, so now that you're the assistant secretary, you can make a motion for us to accept the donation.
I make a motion that the Hamilton Wenham School Committee accepts the donation from Arenio Landscaping for the amount of $9,600.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, Matt's they're a family in town. They're great
Yeah.
people, and I don't know if you guys have noticed, and it's dark now, but the fields.
So two
is the
fields
one-
here and at Winthrop.
And they look fantastic. They're what night and day difference they did, and I'm just very thankful to them. Was it Iron Tree that helped out last
But I
week?
can't-
And
Iron
Hamilton
Tree
Little
and
League.
the Hamilton Wenham
Give
Little
them
League.
another
Yep.
another set of props because really
Yeah.
makes the place
A lot
look
of
a
work.
lot nicer. So,
And that Winthrop Field is not
Yeah,
easy to
yeah.
maintain, since it's like in a wetland.
so we're just hoping everything dries out in time for opening weekend this weekend.
My son has his first game tomorrow night,
Tomorrow night,
so let's hope.
where is Mud Boots?
Baseball is awesome. It starts in parkas and it ends in shorts.
Right. So no committee reports, unless anyone, right? Lauren? Nothing? Come on, I'm running out of time. Where are you going to school, Lauren? Say it right now.
Doesn't know yet.
been
Still working on it.
asking.
Let you know in 2 weeks.
What's going on with
That's what you know by
senior
September.
events?
Well, the Red Sox game was rained out, which was a bummer, but we rescheduled it for next Monday. And the DECA trip is leaving this
Oh,
weekend,
right.
so that's fun.
Where are you guys going?
Orlando.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited.
Good luck.
Yeah, thank you. And that's really all I can think of.
Yeah, bunch of stuff. NHS inductions tomorrow night.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. That too.
Graduation May 30th, or candlelight May 30th, and graduation June 1st.
And candlelight starts at 8?
Candlelight starts at 8 o'clock,
Okay.
and graduation's June 1st at 10 o'clock a.m.
I'm gonna try and make candlelight this year.
Those are the big ones.
So hold on, I'm gonna-
Just as the other school liaisons, Winthrop Open House is Monday night, 5:30 to 7.
Yeah, and the
Winthrop
CPAC
Open House.
has scheduled a meeting in May. I don't know the, oh, well, it might be in my calendar here.
I actually had it,
Yeah, is it May
I had it the 30th.
of April? I
Yeah.
think that got
Is
changed.
that changed?
It's in my school committee email, so it might be the 3rd. That would be,
That's what's on the calendar right now, but that's not always.
yeah, I think she was working on it. Dun, 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 dun. So that'd be from Stacy.
So we can reach out to the contact person at the schools that we're liaisons to, like the wellness, I'll reach out to Danielle and
Yep.
ask her, just to,
Just to let him,
Include.
have her
Yeah.
let you know when the next meeting is.
All right, topics for next meeting, I know.
You're right, April 30th at 6:30
30th.
to 7:30 here at the Bucher School.
Okay.
So, nice audience for our superintendent interviews.
You're looking for May 8th?
Yeah,
So we had vote this at the last day of school.
this is
For May.
May 8th, next meeting.
Student government presentation, so you guys better be ready.
With the
Um,
announcement.
With an
Big
announcement.
announcement.
With the big announcement.
Just wear the shirt.
Yeah, true.
Kevin Sano is going to come and give us a report on the 8th grade trip to Spain. So she wanted to come talk about that. And then you're scheduled to select your finalists for interim superintendent.
The 8th grade trip happen, or I thought it
It
is
was
happening
over.
in the future?
He was over February break.
Was it
It
over?
happened.
Oh, it was over.
It did happen. She wants to give you an
Okay.
update.
All right, that's not the most full night we've ever had, but that sounds like a good night.
It's pretty.
It's a good night, it's a good night. Anything else that we want to have on the radar? No? Great. We're
Well,
actually
we'll
gonna-
add the communication thing on there.
So,
So at the end of the meeting, we would have a
yeah,
communication thing.
all right, that's cool.
Yeah, you'll put that on there too.
For the 8th?
Probably not, probably approve it at the 2 weeks later. That'd be 14 plus 8.
That's the
I think we could add to
22nd.
the conversation to shorten it down, because at that point, maybe we just want to elect someone to write the proposal. I don't think
Okay,
that'll
so why don't
take.
we talk about that on the 8th?
What?
Why don't we talk about that on the 8th?
That's what I'm saying, that we could add
Yeah.
that to the 8th.
All right.
So I don't think that'll take too much time at all. You never know with this crew.
Never know.
You don't miss us. All right, we have 45 seconds to still make the 9:30 cutoff that's on the agenda, which I'm amazed we are doing. So, anything else? Make a motion.
I move that we adjourn at 9:30.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
All right.
Up.